Hello, all. Sorry for a slight delay in posting a new episode. I took a little break to mind another person's business, and then I realized that I need to learn to mind my own. Lesson learned. I have no focus today. I have no intent as to what I want to discuss in today's episode. I think I'm just going to allow whatever is going to naturally emerge, and whatever I feel like discussing just naturally come up, which is not atypical of the typical flow of your One Black Friend podcast. But this one specifically, I don't really have a general idea. We're just going to talk about the things that I had been sort of making notes of over the past week or so. First things first, my cousin and I were having a conversation about a friend of his who decided that they said when they get older, so they're going to work really hard. He's a barber. He's going to work really hard and save up enough money so that he can retire. So right now, he's in his 20s. He's working 7 days a week, 10, 12-hour days. He's just in the mode of grinding and earning money. And once he has earned as much money as he possibly can, then he will be able to retire and not work anymore. And I said, that's a trick of life. He's setting himself up, or I should say the game is setting him up. Because what's going to happen? Let's say it takes him 10 years to save up $100,000. I mean, hopefully not, but let's say it does. It takes him 10 years to save that much. He would have spent 10 years programming himself or developing the habit of a workaholic, right? It's almost like saying, I'm going to drink as much alcohol as I possibly can now, get it out of my system so that when, I'm in my 40s, I will have it, out of my system. Kind of a bad analogy, but you get my point. What you're doing is you're training your mind to work excessively and not rest. You're training your body to work excessively without rest. And so you're developing the habit of hard work. And we have been conditioned by our society that hard work is good. You want to work hard, play hard, right? That's the thing, right? But that's not the thing, is it? All you're doing is stressing yourself out. Right? You're playing the game of life in hard mode, and whatever it is that's benefiting from you working hard, the trade-off is not going to benefit you. You're going to trade 10 years of your life for $100,000, but in 10 years, that $100,000, because of inflation, is basically going to depreciate. You're trading in real hours of your life that you cannot buy back for something that is, a depreciating asset. If you want to think of cash as an asset, well, in your savings account, it's a depreciating asset. 2, it's fiat. It's not backed by anything. And as I've said in previous episodes, even if it were backed by gold, it doesn't matter because gold itself is fiat. Once again, it's the government that's saying gold is worth something. This is valuable. And I've spoken of societies who did not see gold as valuable because it's a rock. You cannot eat it. You cannot sleep in it. It's a shiny rock. And yes, some people have sort of argued that, you can use it for technology. But if the entire system falls, so does technology. You cannot eat technology. You cannot eat gold. It's all fiat. So you're trading in, right now, the best years of your life when you're youthful. So I don't know if you guys have had conversations with old people. I have a very dear friend. Shout out to Marie, who's not going to listen to this because she doesn't know what a podcast is. She's 85 years old. I explained it to her that I have a radio show. Because if I say a podcast, she's like, what is that? And so I go, I have a radio show, Marie. She's 85 years old. And every time I have a conversation with her, she's absolutely just tired. She's 85. She's tired. She's got that joie de vivre. But she's like, the older you get, things slow down, your body doesn't work as well, and your friends start to die. Right? And she's able to laugh about it, and I laugh alongside with her, but it's a little depressing. Right? I can't imagine, being friends with people for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and then you watch them die, and they're not just dying in their sleep, they're dying of something like fucked up, like cancer, heart disease, or diabetes, or something like just shitty, right? So you're not saving, you're working really hard at your peak so that you can retire when, I guess, you have to, like, you're forced to rest. And I don't know if that's a good trade-off. I don't know if that's a good way to live. I always like to think about how people in society, not even society, people existed before civilization, for the most part. Going off of what anthropologists have told us anyway, right? Because who knows, they're guessing. But for the most part, they kind of just, like, they had food, like they hunted in groups. So they spent a lot of time hanging out with each other. It was maybe hard, maybe hot, depending on where they were, or cold. Maybe they didn't live so long, although people don't understand how averages work, right? If you average an infant mortality with the highest, oldest person, it seems as though most people didn't live past 30, but that's an average, right? So if most people are dying in childbirth or, as infants, but then most people, other people are living to their, I guess their 80s or whatever. If you average the two together, you're going to get a middle range number. So people forget that when you talk about averages. So keep that in mind. However, they spend a lot of time kind of just doing what animals do. If you watch animals, like, they hunt, they eat, and then they fucking chill, right? I have been, for the last few years, doing the absolute most. And in that conversation, it wasn't until I had the conversation with my cousin about his friend, because we're only able to see ourselves and other people, right? We use other people, we have to use other people as mirrors. That's how the system sets itself up. But when he was talking about his friend, it's when it dawned on me, like, you are setting yourself up by working consistently, right? First thing in the morning, I have to be doing something. If it's not editing a video, it's writing for the podcast. If it's not writing for the podcast, it's responding to, like, emails. If it's not responding to emails, it's painting. If it's not painting, it's drawing, designing t-shirts. I'm constantly doing something. More so now than I ever did when I was younger. And I'm not sure to what end. But yesterday, I finally decided, actually it wasn't yesterday, the last 2-3 days, the world has been very interesting to me. Apparently I am anemic. I mean, I knew this, like, every time I go into the doctor, they always say you're, like, borderline anemic, and then I just go, it's fine. But I don't eat a lot of meat, but this body does need meat. And so I've just been having, like, dizzy spells and feeling sort of lethargic. And my mom reminded me, she was like, Joanna, you're anemic. She called me Joanna. You're anemic. And I was like, oh shit, yeah, I forgot about that. So I had to just force myself to take some beef liver supplements and eat red meat and beans, kidney beans and things like that to bring back my iron. But I had to force myself to slow down, just to sit. So one time my daughter, it was like 2-3 days ago, I had just sat on the floor in the living room, and the sun just set as I sat in the living room. And so she comes down and she's like, why are you just sitting in the dark? And I said, I didn't start off sitting in the dark. It just, the darkness sort of, happened around me. I've literally just been sitting here. I wasn't on my phone. I was just watching my thoughts, and I just sat down for the first time in years and just started breathing and paying attention to my breath. And my body was telling me to slow down. We're doing too much. We're doing too much, guys. We're doing too much. Stop working hard. I'm not saying stop working. I'm not Beyonce. I'm not telling you to quit your job. I am saying that we're not built to go this hard all the fucking time, right? Everybody's like, what do you do for a living? That's a thing now. People ask, what do you do for a living? And then they follow up. That's my dog, Morpheus, barking in the background. I apologize for that. I'm just in a mode right now. I don't want to stop recording. But if you could just ignore him, Somebody's probably at the front door, and he's being a really good guard dog. So, but we are programmed, right? Work hard. I'm not telling you to quit your job, but this weird mentality of what's your day job and then what's your side hustle, and what did you do to be productive today? Hey guys, fuck that noise. 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 Like, relax. You don't have to play life on hard mode. I had been noticing I was going so hard that I couldn't focus. I've been having a hard time focusing because I'm borderline anemic. So once I started taking in protein again, and shout out to all the vegan listeners, not everybody can be vegan. I have a lot of people messaging me saying like they feel bad because they want to be vegan, but they don't know like if it works for them. And they are concerned about eating meat and their spirituality. And my response to them is some of the most spiritual cultures on this planet, natives, indigenous people, Native Americans particularly is the first who popped into my mind. They were not vegans, guys. They ate the animal. They ate the whole entire animal. But they went around the consumption of the animal. It was a meditative and spiritual practice. They blessed the animal. They expressed gratitude to the animal, but they still ate animals. I don't think there's anything wrong in eating animals if you make sure that it's sourced ethically, if you can, right? And then if you want to engage in a spiritual practice and think of it as an offering, if that helps you, and then put the energy of gratitude over the food for the sacrifice it's made to sustain you as you imbue it into your body, as you imbibe it into your body, as you enter it into your form and it becomes a part of you. Bless it before it becomes a part of you. That's okay. But don't be like me, right? I'm not straight up like vegan, but if you present me with the choice, I will choose plant-based over meat. But it's almost to my detriment, all right? And time and time again, it has been shown to me that this body needs, it needs meat. And time again, I'm risking the health of its body because of idealism, and it's unwise. And I can see the difference even with communicating with you guys, because the last few podcasts have been hard for me. It may not have come through, but it's been hard for me to focus and to speak clearly because I was noticing it was hard for me to recollect. But that's the problem with anemia, is that you're not getting, your body isn't functioning properly. You need that iron count. At least that's what we're told, but you need the high iron, to help with blood flow, to help so you're not fatigued, to help so you don't have the brain fog, so you're not cold all the fucking time, so you're not sleepy all the time. That works for my body. So I have to take a step back. It's real shit, guys. I'm not a spiritual guru. I think some people message me and they think I'm like a spiritual guru. I'm not. I'm just a normal human being who reads a lot. I'm an artist. And so I'm not going to be perfect, and I'm not going to be afraid to share my imperfections and talk honestly and openly about my mistakes, because I'm here trying to figure this shit out alongside you guys. I don't know what is and what isn't the right way. So if I'm doing something and it's not working and I realize, okay, maybe I should sort myself out, I'm going to share that with you, because that's the point of the podcast, right? But back to what I was saying. Stop working hard. It's not natural. If you must work hard in bursts, the way a lion works hard in bursts, right? It hunts, for whatever, short moment of time, catches its full food, and then it chills the fuck out, right? If you look around, look at birds. Those niggas just chilling on fucking, right? On wires and trees and stuff all day. Watch your cat. Watch your dog. The other day, I was just looking at my dog. This dude was sleeping on his back with his legs spread out. You can see his balls. It's bro, that's nice. You must have a nice life. And then I was like, wait, you can do that. I mean, I don't have balls, but I can chill and just take it easy. What am I being conditioned by? Why do I feel like I've got to go? And I think the thing is that I feel as though like if I'm because I'm not physically exerting myself, because I'm not like going to the gym all the time, because I'm not running up and down, whatever, then I'm not burning energy. But if you think about the stress, the emotional stress of just dealing with your internal monologue and the shit that it puts you through, dealing with people on a daily basis, answering phone calls from your family, creative work, like that's energy. You can't, if try do all the things you do on a daily basis without eating and see how far you're able to do that. And the reason why I say that is because food is your caloric intake, that's energy, right? So you need to take in the energy, because all of those things, even if you're not working out, burn energy, exert energy, right? The emotional drain of trying to help people, trying to coach people to do things. If you're an empath, all of that's going on, that's energy. And then on top of that, you're just pushing yourself. No, what is the expression? No days off. Fuck that noise, guys. That shit's unhealthy, bro. Like, stop it. I remember when I ran my own business, I worked 4 hours a day, 3 to 4 days a week. And that was intentional because it was enough. That's all I needed to do in order to like pay my rent, pay my car note, pay my bills, and put some money in savings. And I made sure not to do more than that. I woke up when I felt like it. I didn't have an alarm, right? I went to sleep. Like, everybody knew, don't text me after 10 o'clock. I'm in bed. And then something happened. I don't know if it's a social media thing. It's probably the social media thing. But I got sucked into this like bullshit. You got to create content. Your whole life becomes about content, right? And these companies are siphoning they're siphoning your energy, your potential from you, and they're dangling in front of you this like dream of like, oh, just keep putting content out there, and then maybe one day, because look at this person that made it, maybe one day. And so now I'm getting up, and from 8 o'clock in the morning till like 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, I'm going. Got to be doing something. For what? What is the pot at the end of this rainbow that I'm pursuing? Like, I'm chill right now. I have a friend of mine who worked their asses off for like throughout their 20s and their 30s and then their 40s. And then they were lucky enough to sell their company, and they made millions of dollars selling their company. But now they don't know how to enjoy the money. They're essentially set. But they're still getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning. They're still setting their alarms at 6 o'clock in the morning. They're still working from sun up to sundown. They got to go. They have nothing to grind for, because that's it. They're good. You can get whatever you want. Like, they're good. They have businesses that run themselves. They don't have to do anything. And you would think that at this point in time, they would go, hey, I'm going to travel. I'm going to see the world. What are they doing? They're working. Just picked up something else to do, another job to do. And they, as much as they can tell themselves that like they enjoy doing it, and I'm sure on some level they enjoy doing it, but I think, at least from me and from my observation, the reason why they enjoy doing it is the same reason why a person who's an alcoholic enjoys drinking, right? Or the same reason why a person who's addicted to negativity enjoys gossip. It doesn't feel good, but it's a habit, right? You know how sometimes bad habits are still enjoyable, even though they're not good for you, right? Sometimes you get into conversations with people who are very negative. It puts them in a negative state, but you can tell they still enjoy it. It may not feel good, but it's like chewing tobacco or drinking whiskey. It's fucking gross, but that doesn't matter, because in the suffering, your body can still enjoy suffering. Come on, think about like masochists and sadists, right? Like there's that pain-pleasure dynamic. It's the same spectrum of feeling, so they do enjoy it. But the thing is, like, just because you enjoy something doesn't mean that you should be doing it, and doesn't mean that it's good for you. You got to take a step back. Because on some level, even me, I felt accomplished painting 2 paintings at the same time while listening to a book. That's a bit much, isn't it? That's a bit intense, right? And then as soon as I finished that, okay, now I got to film. Okay, now I got to edit videos. Okay, now I got to do this. And if I told you guys all the shit that I did, you'd be like, well, how are you doing this? But it's this relentless drive to like produce. I'm a photographer as well. Some of you guys didn't know. I have an online store. You can buy my t-shirts. And I'm going to actually keep designing for that. I'm going to come up with fun designs. If you have anything that you want me to design, you have any ideas, feel free to shoot me a message. Let's work together. But understand that in addition to that, like I'm going to start pacing myself, so I'm not doing the most. So I may not respond to you guys' emails as quickly anymore or as promptly anymore because I'm fucking tired. Like I realized that. Like yesterday, guys, I went to bed. I would stay up till 1 o'clock. Stay up at 1 o'clock in the morning. Yesterday at 9, something was like, just go the fuck to sleep. So I was like, okay, fine. I went to bed thinking I would just like maybe just scroll through Instagram or whatever, immediately out. My daughter came to wake me up and was like, Mom, I'm going to bed. And I was like, oh shit, I'm out. I was tired. And I slept from 9:30 to like 6:30. And I didn't even get up on my own. My husband's alarm clock went off. If his alarm didn't go off, I still would have been sleeping. I'm tired now. It's just I haven't done a podcast. And there's still, old habits die hard. I'm telling you guys because I'm telling you this shit from experience. I can't make this shit up. I'm feeling better. Like I've started taking this beef, like bovine thing, or whatever. It's like beef liver, in pill form. I just searched like natural iron and that came up. And it had really cool stuff about Native Americans on the container. So I was like, okay, I can vibe with this. I'm hoping they prayed over it. Actually, I'm going to pray over it on top of that. Not pray like in a religious way. I'm just going to like say thank you to the animal whose body I'm eating. Like that's what I mean by praying. Because I'm not praying to some like invincible guy in the sky. I'm talking to the person who gave me its body so I can eat it. And I appreciate you for making me not feel like shit. And so I can focus on the shit I'm saying. Because I'm 22 minutes in. For the first time in a while, I actually feel good. Like I can focus on what I'm saying. The words are coming to me. I wasn't okay there. You gotta take care of yourselves, guys. Chill the fuck out. Take a step back. If you're a social media person, chill. Don't let these motherfuckers like run you ragged. I guarantee you, Zuckerberg and whoever owns TikTok, they're not working as hard as you. They hire people to work, and then they enjoy their lives while they're young. Meanwhile, they want us to spend our best lives, our youth, producing for them. Like they're fucking succubi, whatever. So just keep that in mind. Try to live like we're supposed to live naturally. Set yourself some time that you're supposed to get work done and then stop. It's okay to just mindlessly consume a TV show or read a book or listen, to a podcast. And you can literally just sit and listen to a podcast without having to do something else. I like to paint and listen to books because I don't need to think to paint, and listening to books quiets my internal monologue. But I can't listen to audiobooks while doing anything else. So that's why I pair the two. I don't like to listen to music when I paint. I don't really like I have moments where I go through music. Like I use music as medicine. So if I'm going through like an emotional moment or I'm dealing with like my internal monologue going ham, I will listen to music. But, and it's usually music without words. I've actually gotten in the habit of listening to like foreign music, like music from like Russia, music from France, music from India, because I don't understand what they're talking about. So it's still words, but it doesn't trigger my left brain. So it allows my right brain to take over, because when I listen to the words, that is like sort of lyric, I will basically translate what they're saying. I create lyrics. So I'm using my right brain to create or recreate the lyrics to the song. So the songs already have a lyrics, like have their own lyrics, right? They're like in French or whatever, and I don't understand it. So I let my mind create, my right brain create words to the song. So it becomes a creative process. And the reason why I'm stressing the right brain is because the left brain is where the internal monologue comes from. And so anything I can do to diminish the impact that the left brain has on my consciousness, on my awareness, I will do. I'm actually going to start trying to consciously do more things with my left hand. So as far as you guys may or may not know, your left hand is controlled by your right brain, and your right hand is controlled by your left brain. I do think it's interesting, and I don't think it's a coincidence that we live in a society that essentially forces people, even people who are left-handed, to do things with their right hand. Now imagine if the inverse were true, and we lived in a society that made people use their left hand. The expression is that people who are left-handed are the only people who are in their right mind. It's a double entendre because they're using, right, their right brain. But it's also speaking to the fact that, and I don't know if this is done consciously or not, but that internal monologue, that's coming from the left brain. And it's also what's responsible for a lot of our like trauma, stress, anxiety. That's the left brain. So I've been doing that as well, using my right brain to create, especially when I'm listening to words with lyrics. But for the most part, when I paint, I don't really think. And so, or I don't need to think about what I'm painting because I'm literally just sitting there and I'm a conduit for art and I'm allowing the art to flow through me. I had to learn to do that actually. When I was younger, when I first started painting, I used to try to paint. And for those of you who are seasoned artists, if you're a musician, if you're a singer, songwriter, you know this. If you're an artist, you draw, if you paint, you understand this. Artists, creators know this. When you try to create, that's when you cause problems for yourself. You have to literally let the art flow through you. And I had to learn that. I'm not the one painting. These paintings already exist. I'm just allowing it to come into this reality. That's it. I'm just a conduit. So, speaking of entering into reality, I want to share some other thoughts with you. I had this idea the other day. Remember I told you guys the last episode I was like cutting back on my mushrooms? Not like magic. Well, I stopped taking magic mushrooms and I still haven't taken it in a while. And I also scaled back on the broccoli sprouts. I think I just take one a day now because I was trying to drop myself to a depressive state so that I could create. It sounds weird, but once again, those of you who create understand. It's not necessarily that I was trying to be depressed, even though I made a joke about it. It's more that from a lower state, you're able to see things to write about. As opposed to when you're like on a higher state, particularly when you're high artificially, by using like broccoli sprouts, for example, or mushrooms, adaptogens. Like you're tweaking your brain. You're almost like, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, it's your brain. You're hacking your brain. So you're using different herbs and things like that. I call them icons. They appear to us as herbs and, you know, mushrooms, fungi, whatever, but they're icons. The book, What is Real, sort of illustrates this really well. Like if we are in a simulation, then you have to think about like Mario Brothers and how that the mushroom, it's not an actual mushroom. It's just a representation of the mushroom. And what does the mushroom do? It makes him bigger. Right? One pill makes you larger, one pill makes you small, right? But it looks like a mushroom. And if you start looking at this world in symbols, I'm always leaning into the simulation hypothesis, because I think that this world is dual. It appears real, but it's an illusion, right? And so even within the illusion, things that you see also could be symbolic. Just as like a dream appears real while you're in it, but then the things that you encounter in the dream are symbolic. So today, long story short, TLDR, I tried to help somebody and they didn't want my help. Like they completely misunderstood everything that I was trying to do. It was very weird, but it was a very interesting experience. Like this person was so negative that they couldn't even accept help. And so I took a step back from the whole situation and let it be. And I remember I was talking to my cousin and my close friend, and they both had said, like, maybe don't be so helpful next time. Maybe watch a little bit before you try to help. But that's not how I flow. If I feel it in my heart to help a person, I'm gonna help them, because that's just, I have two philosophies. The first philosophy is, if this world is shit, I will not contribute more shit into this world. I will not add more shit to this world. If I'm to exist and I'm to live in this world, I'm going to do everything in my power to make this world beautiful. And two, always treat people that come across your path how you would want to be treated if you were in their position. So that's always going to be my MO. So I'm not going to really change that. It is what it is. And as I was saying this to my cousin, I looked up and there was a bunny rabbit right in front of me. It's just like, I've lived in California for years. Never seen a bunny rabbit. And it was like right in front in my yard. Like it just had popped up. I was walking to my house and it stood in front of the gate and I thought it was going to run away, but it just, she, her, I don't know, him, whatever, was just looking at me. And I was like, hi, bunny. And it just like looked, and then it turned around and it just like walked through the gate and like walked into my yard and then frolicked off. And I took that as a sign, like I took its presence as a symbol of like a blessing. Right? Like if that was a dream and I saw a bunny going into my home, like I would interpret it exactly as I chose to interpret it today. Like that was a symbol of something good, right? Of the universe sort of saying it's all good. Like you're on the right path. And so that made me happy. But back to mushrooms and things like that. So these are sort of physical representations, but they are icons. Think icon like when you are on a computer and you have like, the FaceTime logo, and these are just icons, but they represent something. So they represent an experience. All right. So the mushroom represents an experience. The broccoli sprouts represents an experience. The foods that you eat represent experiences of what your body is going to do. All right. So we're leaning into simulation hypothesis. So I kind of eased off of it so that I could kind of enter into a more creative state, because the state that I was in, the experience that had been brought on by mushrooms and the broccoli sprouts, sulforaphane broccoli sprouts extracts, for those of you who are wondering, the experience that was brought on by that were just kind of a very calm, elevated state, completely unemotional, like non-reactive, not too joyful, but not angry, just sort of mellow and balanced. And that was great. But I personally have found that I couldn't create from that space. Not that I needed to be melancholy and like moody and dark and like self-harm. I just needed to be in a space where I could observe with some criticism, because I was in a state while I was microdosing that there was no problems. And I just said, everything's going to work out and all's one. And so I needed some sort of criticism, or the ability to criticize my own thoughts so that I could create. And so I came across a really cool idea about the concept of could a consciousness exist in purely auditory form? So I'm going to share with you guys what I wrote in my notes about, could a consciousness take on just pure auditory form? It's a little bit going to be like haphazard, because it was like one of those like eureka moments where you like think of something and then you just start like writing shit down. There's no focus, but we'll pull it all together. So I wrote, I want to present to you a different interpretation of an alien. All right. So we talk about outer space. Then we also talk about inner space. Right. But since nothing is actually physical, then the space that's out there, I actually talked about this on the last episode, I think. The space that's in outer space is the same space that is in inner space. It's just what appears to be a wall is of like solidity, that is our body, is merely an illusion. It's all the same space, right? So for example, if you're outside and you tell somebody tells you to point up, right? Where is up? Well, what's up for me is not going to be what's up for somebody in Australia. It's all different directions. Basically what they're doing is they're pointing out, not really up. But all they're doing is they're pointing out to space. There's no up, really. It's just it's up is out. Up is actually out, right? So then that out that is being pointed to is everywhere. And it's basically, they're just pointing out to space. But once again, it's all an illusion, because what's out is also the same as what's in, just varying sort of degrees of it. So in the book, I think it was like Parallel Worlds by Michio Kaku, he mentions that microscopic black holes are constantly popping into and out of existence, right? If that's the case, then, and these microscopic black holes exist in space, quote, outer space. But if these microscopic black holes can exist out there, right, up in space, they can also exist within an inner space. And then there begs the question, for one, what is the mind? So the Egyptians and their mystery school, probably one of the wisest, most learned societies that have ever walked this earth, at least to our knowledge, they didn't think of the brain as anything valuable. In fact, when they went to embalm the body, they took the brain out, scooped it out. I can understand why, considering what I've been speaking about and how the brain actually limits the body and forces us to have a particular type of conscious experience, right? So they didn't think that the brain produced the mind, and I would probably agree with them. Then where is the mind? Could the mind itself be a dimension within itself? And if the mind is a dimension in some sort of inner space, right? It's still a dimension in space. Then could entities access our mind, your mind, from another dimension, right? From dimension to dimension. So if your mind itself is a dimension, then could an entity, I don't like the term aliens because of the connotation that comes with it, but for the sake of this conversation, could aliens access your mind and exist within your mind as this dimension that your consciousness happens to sort of exist in? It's hard to conceptualize, but it's interesting. And then if that's the case, then we start to talk about multidimensional beings. How do you conceptualize a multidimensional being? Right? And could they exist within your mind? I just posted a video on TikTok today where I asked the question, so we believe that our mind is our mind, the same way that you believe that your house is your house. But if I'm alone in my house, am I really alone? It's kind of fucked up to think about. But let's think about it. If you're alone in your house right now, you're not really alone. There's probably ants, spiders, mice, creatures, physical creatures that you can't see. But for me, even over the last 2 weeks, I've been getting this weird feeling of somebody standing right behind me, and I keep turning to look, and then there's nobody there. So then could there be entities that I'm not even going to say that they're non-physical. They're just not I can't perceive something. Something is there because it's causing me to turn, right? The way when you're driving on the highway, somebody stares at you, you turn and look at them and you catch them stare. I get that same feeling. I'm not scared. It's just interesting to me. So yes, I'm, quote, alone in the sense of I'm the only human in this house, right? But that doesn't mean that I'm actually alone. There are bacteria, there's viruses that I can't even perceive, and there could be others as well. And the same could apply to your mind. You think that your mind, it's just you that's in your mind. It's just your consciousness that's in your mind. But then we hear this voice. I told you I'm not going to come off this internal monologue thing, and here we are. But inside of your mind, there's also this voice. Could the voice, what we consider an internal monologue, could it be a consciousness itself that exists purely in auditory form? Now back to my notes. Now, if the physical or particulate material world is one dimension, so the world that we perceive right now is a dimension, then a non-particulate, non-physical world could also be another dimension. And a non-physical world could basically be anything, right? So you have this world right now where it's what we think of as a dimension. It's like what we can see. So the visual, what we can visually like perceive is what we consider a dimension. So when I say 3D, this is a 3D world. Well, it's something that you can perceive, but you can't perceive sound. But just because you can't perceive sound with your eyes, you can't visually perceive sound. But just because you can't perceive visually with your eyes sound, that doesn't mean that it's like you can't, like it doesn't exist. I mean, you can hear it, right? But same thing, I can feel something standing behind me. That sense of feeling, it's called the sixth sense. So being able to feel an entity standing behind me, even though I cannot see it, the same way I can hear music, I can even feel music. Have you ever heard like a symphony so beautiful, or classic music so beautiful, or just a song that's so fucking gorgeous that it literally, I mean, I'm saying gorgeous, but even the word gorgeous, it's something that's based on like visual perception, but obviously it's not, right? You can't see a beautiful song, a beautiful piece of music, but you can feel it. And it like makes your hairs on your head kind of stand, and on your, on your arms kind of stand, and your heart races a bit, and you feel that like welling emotion in your chest area. And sometimes you cry. So that's something. That's something that's moving you. And my argument here, what I'm basically trying to get here, is that could sound itself, could there be a dimensional world or a dimension of pure sound? And could this dimension be comprised primarily of just auditory consciousness, like entities that only exist as waveforms, sound waves, as opposed to like particles of particulate form? Like we're particles, sort of. I think on a quantum level, we exist as both, right? Particle and wave until collapsed. But as I perceive everything around me, I touch, it's particulate, it's physical. But the argument is that it exists, it's a wavicle, it exists both simultaneously as potentia or in potentia, as wave and particulate. It's like it's a duality. So I'm going to go back to music. You can't touch it, but you can feel it. And that's interesting to me. And as I talked about, I think 2 episodes ago, apparently you can channel it into this world, and you can fill your mind with it, and it can move you. It can impact you. Now, somebody was saying, a couple of people commented on that episode on YouTube, and they were saying that I must have channeled the song. And I agreed at the time, like perhaps this is a song that exists in another reality. And I kind of imagined like a singer singing the song, and then I just kind of like maybe picked it up on, use my brain as a radio, signal to tune into a parallel universe and then bring the song into this reality. That's certainly one possibility. But then when I was writing these notes, I thought about a different possibility, that this thing actually entered my brain because I was on mushrooms when I did it, which then opened up an aspect of my brain. And if we're arguing that the mind, not an aspect of my brain, rather an aspect of my mind, and if we're arguing that the mind itself is a dimension, and remember I said that each sort of like food, like a mushroom is actually an icon that represents like an experience, right? Then think about, like, I'm getting Matrix / Alice in Wonderland vibes, right? Like, what if when you take ayahuasca or you take mushrooms, right? What you're doing is you're actually opening up like a microscopic black hole for something to come through that allows you to sort of perceive things in this reality. I got to play with that idea. Same thing with DMT, though. Like, I do think that DMT takes your consciousness, like opens up a black hole. Well, there we go. Sorry, I have to tell you what I'm thinking. So I think when you take DMT and mushrooms, it actually opens up a dimension for your consciousness to travel from your dimension of mind to another dimension. I'll say that again. When you take an experience, kind of like, Alice, right? When she ate. Ooh, gosh, there's a lot happening right now. Okay, so think about the story of Adam and Eve. They ate the fruit. Could it be them consuming the fruit? It's what took them out of the dimension of Eden and brought them into this world. It took their consciousness out of a mind that was on Eden and actually caused like an opposite reaction that, like, say, a mushroom would cause you to kind of shift to a state. Remember I said, like, the reason why I stopped taking mushrooms is because it was keeping me in the state of, like, everything's okay, like in a state of, like, almost like paradise in a way. Because it wasn't that the biblical God, not saying I believe the story, it's just I like the analogy. It wasn't that the biblical God was saying, like, don't eat anything. He just said this specific tree, leave it alone. So if they were surrounded by like psychedelics, it helped keep their consciousness in a state of mind that was like chill. Like, so they were unlocking the experience of a paradise. But then once they ate of the fruit, it actually changed their brains. It changed the channel of their mind. It shifted their consciousness into a different dimension where now they couldn't exist in paradise without seeing problems everywhere, which is what the internal monologue does. So could you make the argument that the internal monologue is actually brought on by consuming an icon, right, a food that shifted the mind into a different reality experience, or you're still in the same state, but now all you can do is suffer? That's deep. That's deep, because if you go back to the story, I sort of shifted topics a little bit, but I think I'm going to try to get back on point, but this is important. If you look back to the story, they were still in Eden before they were cast out. But even in paradise, all they could see was what was wrong with them. So they started judging. Remember I said I interacted with an individual where I try to help, but all they could see was what was wrong with what I was doing? They had eaten the fruit. If this was a story, they had eaten the fruit. Because all they could see was what was wrong. So Adam and Eve looked at each other, and instead of saying, like, you look beautiful, what did they do? They started shaming themselves. They started shaming each other. And so then when the Elohim came and saw that they had, like, clothed themselves, they realized that Adam and Eve had eaten from the fruit. Just like, you ever run into a person and you know when they're high? You could tell that they're high. You can tell what kind of drugs they're on too, right? If you run into somebody that it does a lot of mushrooms, right? You can tell their vibe's different than somebody who does like a lot of weed, right? Who smokes a lot of weed. Their vibe's different than like somebody who, does a lot of coke, right? Like they're different. Their experiences, they're all on the same earth, and they could all be in the same party, but because of the icon that they took into their mind, they're accessing different dimensions. You get what I mean? Right? So you could tell. So I'm thinking the Elohim, or their God, when they came back and met Adam and Eve, saw that they were basically, like, they were tripping. Like, they were like, I'm naked. Oh my gosh, my titties are out. Let's like cover this up. This is not a good look, right? They started judging themselves. And that's how the gods knew that Adam and Eve had like eaten whatever this fruit was, and they were high off of it because it was like making them trip. They were like on like crack or something like that, or like meth or something. Maybe the apple was like some sort of like plant that gives you a bad trip, right? And all you could see was what was wrong. That's interesting. I have to come back to that. I want to like replay that. Like maybe I'll make that a clip because that's interesting. What are we in? Okay. So here's back to the notes. Music. You can't touch it, but you can channel it into this world and fill your mind with it, and it can move you, impact you. Are you willing to consider that it could also be intelligent? Are you willing to consider that music could also be intelligent? Could an auditory consciousness, could sound itself, or could a consciousness exist purely as sound? Could a piece of music enter the mind through a wormhole as a waveform, a sound wave? Right? I thought I was channeling the music, but what if the music itself was a consciousness that entered into me and now is driving me to create it, to produce it, because now it wants to spread its seed. It's a reproduction. That's how, like, it's a type of consciousness that the way it reproduces is in the minds of other people. Ooh, this is trippy. You see, guys, I got depressed so I can share this with you. You're welcome. I'm back to being chill, by the way. I haven't taken mushrooms yet, but I did start back up on my broccoli sprouts, so I'm super zen. But I wrote this when I was depressed, so you got to use depression tactically. I'm not saying do what I did, because I wouldn't recommend it, because I was also like crying for like a week. But like, I mean, I got over it because I knew what was going on and I was able to write. But it's important that you know how to pull yourself out of it if this is what you're going to do. I would not recommend it, but I know how to pull myself out of it. And I'm not saying it's been pleasant, but I am grateful for the experience because it allowed me to sort of dive deep, go down and pull this idea out. And it's a very interesting idea, and I enjoyed sort of playing with it. But yeah, what if there are entities, consciousness, interdimensional beings that exist purely as sound, as waveforms? What if there were interdimensional entities that exist purely as waveforms, and then the way they come in through the minds of magicians, whose minds tend to have maybe more access points, and then they drive the musician, I hope I didn't say magician, anyway, musician, to now bring it to create the music in this world, and then they go out into the world, and then that's how they reproduce from one mind to another. And that's how you get the idea of like an earworm, like you just have a song pop into your head out of nowhere, and now you're singing it. Well, it's using your consciousness to sort of like birth itself, and it's feeding off of like, what if this is an ongoing thing and it's not just internal parasites, like the internal monologue that is a parasite, but even sound, like songs could be a parasite. Trippy, huh? Back to the notes. And when you hear it, okay, here I wrote like, okay, so your consciousness to create it, to bring it forth into this world so it can enter the mind of or exist as a particulate, however minuscule in the mind of those who hear it. And when you hear it, it moves you energetically. How can something literally send chills down your spine if it wasn't a kind of intelligence? Think about it. An auditory intelligence. Now let's shift back to the internal monologue. I want to use the biblical story of creation as an allegory. I'm still in my notes. In the beginning was the sound. Some say it was Om. In the beginning was the word Om. But I want to interpret it literally as in the beginning was the sound. Let's say in the beginning was an auditory consciousness that existed as a waveform and then became a particle, became a photon. Let there be light. Let's say that again. In the beginning was a wave function, a sound wave, an auditory consciousness that preceded form before collapsing into a photonic particle we call light. In the beginning was an auditory consciousness, and that was the creator. Think about it like string theory, right? They say if you go down past like subatomic particles, past quarks, all of that, you eventually find like vibrating strings in string theory. So if they're vibrating strings, then obviously they should make a sound. And analogies that have been used is that this world itself is a kind of visual symphony, but it's created by vibration, and then the sound happens, and then all of this sort of emerges. It makes me think of that Futurama episode where Fry has this instrument that you play, and depending on how how sharp or intelligent your mind is, or how creative your mind is, it like brings forth a sort of like visual symphony, but it starts with sound first. And the same thing, I talked about this on TikTok Live, and which should be up on the YouTube. And that was from like last weekend. And somebody commented like synesthesia, which was a brilliant comment, by the way, if that was you. But synesthesia is when musicians, specifically, seems to be musicians can do this. A lot of people can do this, but I've heard musicians talk about this, is that when they hear a particular sound, they see colors identify with it. So just because all of us sort of lack the ability to perceive sound in a visual form, that doesn't mean that it cannot produce or present as a visual experience. So we really do need to take a step back and redefine what we consider intelligence, and make sure we're not judging something as intelligence simply because, or unintelligent simply because it mimics our intelligence. That's dumb. Back to the notes. I think sound could very well be consciousness. I think that the internal monologue itself can also be a type of intelligence existing merely as a sound wave, but hooking your attention and then hijacking your mind's ability to collapse wave functions into particles to give itself some sort of form, or to inhabit your physical form in this reality, exactly like how Parasite works. If that's the case, then the internal monologue, this auditory consciousness, is successful. It appears to be actively influencing our reality experience. And the reality experiences that get actualized or collapsed into this reality. Because look around you. And look at the world that we live in. This world is not beneficial to humanity. Like, think about what I was saying about how hard we work. People are working themselves sick, working themselves to death. Yeah, I ran into a person this week who was saying that like they were going to work 80 hours a week, and they could do it because, well, where they come from, that's normal. Also, where you come from, people die at like 40, 50, and they look their age. Something is working you. Like, it makes me think of like a science fiction novel where like people, like young people, are driven to just work, and like burn out. And they literally burn out by like 30, 40. I think that's like a Doctor Who episode or something like that. It's not far-fetched. It's just a different type of an imagination, right? We would have to stop perceiving what we think of as alien and what we think of as intelligence. Like, we have to think bigger than our own egos to think that if something was alien, it would look human or humanoid, 2 feet, 2 eyes. It could exist as a sound or as a wave function. Right? Go back to the notes. I keep trying to get you guys to reimagine an alien entity. Something not of this world or this dimension. I want you guys to redefine what it means. Because right now, our closed-minded expectation of what an alien should be or what shape an alien should take is blinding us or blinds us from seeing, or in this case, hearing, what is right in front of us. Why do we think that an alien life form would have to be physical when we're not even really physical? Do you need a physical body to exist? How do you define existence? Does the wind have a physical body? You can argue that nothing is truly physical, right? It's just density of vibration, right? Physical objects on a quantum level are mostly empty space. An atom is mostly empty space. So those are my notes. Would love to hear your thoughts on this one, guys. Would love to hear your thoughts on this one. All right, some more notes. Here's another note. What if the duality of this world are just visual representations of binary code on a base level? I'll come back to that on another episode. I want you to think about it, because we know 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1. That's binary code, right? But we've also said that everything in this reality is like a force duality, shadow, light. Remember I said you have to think of everything as symbols, as icons. Like a mushroom's not really a mushroom. If you name it, then you're immersed in it. But it really is just an icon. If it's a simulation, it's not really solid. It's just an icon, right? So you have a solid form and a shadow, right? Duality there, but that's 0 and 1 if you want to look at the code behind it. Thought that was interesting. Another thing I wrote is I've been using books as a time machine. And what I mean by that is that if I'm in a weird state of mind, I will find an audiobook that I listened to when I was in a happier state, and I'll play it again. And it shifts my mind back to my perception and where I was, my emotional state at the time that I listened to that book. Just want to share that with you. Something to think about. Another note. I wonder what I would be like if I were a place. That's a random note. I was watching the Sandman on Netflix. They need to do a better job of advertising this show because the show's amazing. I really enjoyed it. I'm actually probably going to go back and rewatch it once I'm done recording this episode, because visually it was gorgeous and the storytelling was very well done. The first episode was brilliant. The visuals were gorgeous. I think it was well cast. And I'm also going to probably listen to the book as well, because I think that it's probably super deep. But there was a character on there that was a person when you first saw him, but then towards the end of the series, he was like, actually, I'm a place. And he transitioned into an actual place. Like he was like a field. I forget what his name was, but he turned into a field. And I was like, yo, that's dope. I love that shit. Like, what would I be if I was a person? I'm sorry, I am a person. What would I be if I were a place? I mean, I'm not a person, but you know what I mean. All right, like, would it be like pink flowers everywhere, lots of like classical music playing around, and sort of like daffodils with like occasionally there will be like a thunderstorm, right? And then it will be back to like sunny again, and things will just like spring into existence, and there would be like black holes popping in and out. And there would be an auditory consciousness frolicking the field, and there would just be entities walking through the field that exist only as waveforms. What would you be if you were a fucking planet? And then ask yourself what Earth would be if Earth became a person. If you think about how beautiful Earth is, our planet is, but then think about like the sickness. Something to think about. What would you be? That's something I'd like also you guys to comment. What would you be? What kind of place would you be? All right, guys. Thanks for listening.